for being there. Really appreciate, especially that you're we got our moderator in the house, Ridgeview, and we've got Orlando OBX. Thank you so much to the members. Thank you for being a member. If you're currently a member like Orlando OBX, really helps us get this information out and helps this small family business survive, because we want to bring you the most important auto news. And when we feel like it's kind of really big and unavoidable, we need to also bring you some world news, but we'll keep that to the end of the live when there is some, in a section called Rant. Little Johnny's Rant. So tonight, you're in for a good show, folks. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking about automakers with the most recalls, not the most reliable, the most recalls. We'll talk about reliability and a model you can really save a lot of money with at the end of the show, and use a little data to prove that this is actually the vehicle I'm going to be mentioning is a great vehicle to buy as a 10-year-old vehicle to save money. Yes, welcome to the chat, folks. So thank you so much for being here, for supporting us, and we'll work to support you all, the community, with information you need to know. That's what Johnny's Rants is about too, because I think it's really important to talk about subjects that are important to our health, our freedom, our liberty, to just have a good general awareness of what's going on and to question a lot of things. Always encourage debate. Just, don't attack the person. Try to bring data to the conversation. Ford Video Guy, thank you so much for being here. Highlander, thank you very much, folks. So we're talking about automakers with the most recalls. We're talking about how Ford is done being boring. So we've got a really good topic there and a lot to cover. Ford, we'll also be talking about Ford Bronco wait times, how they were bad, but Ford actually did a lot to help that out. And we'll be talking about how they're now going to be bringing vehicles, Broncos that is, down to Argentina. They held off on that. We'll also be talking about used Ford F-150s and how they're a great buy. And we'll be talking about Lightning planned production cut, but it's a top seller. So we'll get to the bottom of that story, have it make a lot of sense. I'm looking forward to talking about how Ford is done with boring models, because I've got some exciting models to show you. And of course, some of that has to do, of course, with the switchgear that was announced this week. I don't know, you could call it an electric Raptor if you needed to compare it to something. It's essentially an electric Raptor. Sorry, started the show a little late, got a little, went in to kiss the baby, my daughter, and on the cheek, and she turned to try to either kiss me or hit me, so messed up the hair. Not that that's important, didn't waste too much time there, but it was important to give the baby a kiss, because that's the reason I do all of this. Well, when I have my Johnny's Rants, it's all about just making sure that we're as aware as possible as a community of what's potentially going on. We really need to question everything and think things through the best we can. So great night. We're going to start up with automakers with the most recalls. Then we're going to get to talking about how Ford is done being boring. I think that's a fantastic story to be covering. So I look forward to that. Now let's hit right into the first story. Let's talk about, we'll get right into episode 1. Automakers with the most recalls. So I think it's pretty important to talk about recalls, because it is very much a misunderstood topic amongst journalists. I had to look long and far to actually find a properly done news article on this. So this is from Power Nation, PowerNationTV.com. I can't believe it. I went through, all the big legacy media news stories, the big legacy brands, and they're all talking just about simply, hey, these are your models, the most recalled, your manufacturers that have the most recalls, and that's it. That is so, in my opinion, unprofessional, because the type of recall is critical. And then, not to mention, there's a whole other story, folks, that's called, what did manufacturers not recall? And that's worse than what they did recall. And of course, we need to know what they actually did recall. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about what actually was recalled. So what are the numbers? How many recalls? How many people were affected? And very, very importantly, What were those recalls actually for? There's some very serious recalls, and there's some seriously not important, not to be worried over recalls. I can think of a few at Ford and Lincoln this year. Recalls for chimes not being quite long enough from your door being open, for example. Seatbelt chimes. That's minor. But then there's more serious recalls, such as fire. If the vehicle could catch on fire, that's a serious recall. But you've got all these big legacy, apparently professional journalists that do this full time, and they just don't care about actually informing us. What they care about is getting you to click on their article so that they can get paid and survive with the least amount of effort. And I find disgraceful, because I'm a small family business. I already work 53 hours a week besides outside of this channel. And I think I managed to cover this in a much more professional manner thanks to Power Nation, the only website, and this isn't big legacy media, but this is the only website that it could actually find that did the job properly. Thankfully, I know enough about recalls and how they can be unbelievably important or unbelievably irrelevant, so that I knew I needed to find this story. And it actually hits close to home, because if you think about it, I own two Porsche 911s, a 1999 and a 2000. And that should go down in history as a reminder of how important it is to consider not just how many recalls and how many people are affected by recalls at a manufacturer, but more importantly, what about companies that aren't doing recalls? So 1999 Porsche, the Porsche 911 had a dual bearing IMS. The IMS was a dual bearing. So the IMS is the little piece going into the engine, controlling that camshaft movement. And apparently they've estimated it at having less than 1% failure. What led to the failure? Well, the failure would actually lead to the engine essentially exploding from the inside, and you had a $25,000 repair on your hands. Now, Porsche didn't do a recall for the 1999, but they did in 2000 bring out a new, and this also affects the Porsche Boxsters. So in 2000, they come out with a single row bearing IMS. So the IMS went to a single row of bearings, and those bearings estimated at over 10% of the time would degrade, and then little shards of metal would cause the motor to explode. They never did a recall. We're 20 some years later, and there's still no recall. So the bigger story is about, as buyers, that need to watch our money more than ever. You go back to the 1950s, and the man of the household would be the only one usually working and would be able to easily provide for his whole family. When my friend was living out in Vancouver, on the island, there's a 3-story building now worth millions and millions of dollars, but the original owners were a grocery bagging man and a cashier. His wife was the cashier, so they both had jobs, not the best paying jobs, but back then you could be living in Vancouver in a 3-story with not the highest paying jobs, but a grocery bagger and a cashier. Can you imagine that? So more than ever, it's important to watch our dollars. And remember, folks, when you have a recall, it might be a little annoying to bring your vehicle in. Sometimes there's no rush whatsoever, unless it could cause a fire, as we'll see with some of these brands. But if it's, let's say, your Ford Maverick and your airbag could overinflate by 11 millimeters, well, you probably don't have a whole lot to worry about, and you can just get it done at your next oil change. It's not the most pressing issue, likely. However, when you have some recalls on this list at certain manufacturers, that the airbag could send metal shards into your body, causing permanent injury or death, well, that's a different story. That's a very serious recall. So let's get right into this and look at the stats here. Okay, so we have Ford with 56 recalls for 2023. It's 5.9 million vehicles affected. They are number one. They have the most recalls, and it's not affecting the most people. Honda, 10th on the list, they have 6.3 million people affected but only 19 recalls. So they got put in the 10th position for most recalls because they're counting the number of recalls, not the number of people that affected. But Honda, it affected the most amount of people. Chrysler, you've got Chrysler here at 45 recalls. 2.7 million people affected. Mercedes-Benz, 31 recalls for the year. 478,173 people affected. BMW in fourth. So you've got BMW in fourth with 30 recalls, 332,954 people affected. General Motors in fifth position, 25 recalls, 2 million people affected. I think General Motors could maybe do with doing a few more recalls because they've got a bad air conditioning unit that can cause you to take the whole motor out of the engine bay. That's something worth keeping in mind. You've got Nissan, and that's just one example. You've got Nissan with 23 recalls affecting 1.8 million people. Kia in seventh position, 21 recalls, so with 3.1 million people affected. You've got Jaguar in eighth position, 21 recalls, 85,205 people affected. Of course, Jaguar sells so many less vehicles than Kia, Nissan, than really anyone above on this list. Volkswagen. Now, Volkswagen is one of the most sold brands in the world. 20 recalls, 452,762 people affected. I'm surprised it's that low, and it makes me wonder, should they have maybe done a few more recalls to provide a better service? Is this, for example, similar to the Porsche 911 and Porsche Boxster IMS story from the late 90s until the late 2000s? I don't know. I don't have any data to base it on because, of course, often requires a manufacturer coming out with the information themselves. And it's tough because if you come out with the information yourself, you get blasted by journalists. Journalists destroy big legacy media that just want clicks and dollars and money. You know, they want their quick fix. They're like drug addicts. They're going to make a huge deal out of companies doing recalls. It's an easy story to cover. It's quick, it's fast, and it makes them money. Much more importantly, which they pretty much never cover, what are these recalls really about? How serious are they? So we can point out a few interesting things about this list. Ford with 56 recalls affecting 5.9 million people. That's almost roughly 3 million people less than in 2022. So Ford had made a promise to improve on the product, that they really want to cut down on recalls. And back when they made this announcement, Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, made that announcement a while back in 22. I was really hoping that as time would progress, that it wouldn't be that they'd be calling less recalls, but having just as many issues, but that there would be less issues. Now, a lot of these recalls throughout the year in 2023 at Ford, of the 56 recalls, I can say the vast majority weren't all that serious. They weren't life-threatening. They weren't fire-related. So that's actually really great. I'm surprised Chrysler, and really I should say, Ram. I'm surprised they haven't, completely recalled the transmission and differential, affecting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of truck owners every year. But maybe that's more personal opinion. I don't have any data on that. I just hear, same thing with Jeep. I hear a lot of complaints in the transmission department coming out of Ram 1500s and out of Jeeps. And frame complaints coming out of the Ram 2500, 3500, and beyond. Lots of frame complaints and enough photo evidence on the internet to say we should question that. I don't know how I'd feel about going heavy in a box on a Ram. And actually this year, my dealership took 2 Ram 1500s on trade that actually had the frame coming to sink in. Now you can visually check it. Save money if you want to buy a Ram, great, but inspect it. Bring a tape measure and make sure that the top of the box and the bottom of the box, measure it. Measure between the cabin, the bed, truck cabin is where, the family sits. And the bed is the bed where you put stuff in. Keep in mind, always look at your payload. Payloads, how much you're legally allowed to add on total weight onto the truck. Classic Rams are inexpensive, but they've got low payload, and you got to think about how much weight you're going to be putting in there. Now, this article, Power Nation, this company did a great job. They actually covered what these were mostly about. So Ford recalled, let's get into that. Ford recalled over 870,000 newer F-150 pickup trucks in the US due to faulty electric parking brakes. So faulty electric parking brakes. Doesn't mean the vehicle is gonna just roll away, because of course they're all automatic. As being all automatic transmissions, you have to put it in park before walking away. This is the electric parking brakes. So that's your essentially hand brake. Now, Ford also recalled over 238,000 Explorers because the rear axle mounting bolt on some models could potentially fracture, causing the drive shaft to disconnect. That's serious. If that happens when you're driving at highway speeds, you've got a dangerous situation. So that's one recall that's actually serious. Now you've got 341,000 Ram diesel trucks that were recalled due to an electrical connector issue that could overheat, resulting in potential fires. This is unbelievably serious, folks. One owner stated that his Ram truck caught on fire after the engine was turned off. Ram informed affected owners to keep their trucks parked outside until the repairs were made. That is unbelievably serious, folks. And it's sad that big legacy media only talked about, quick list, 2 paragraphs on who are the most recalled, didn't talk about what those recalls were. Power Nation, good work, good, excellent work on your part. Ram also issued a do not drive order for older pickup trucks equipped with Takata airbags. 132,000 Jeep Cherokees were recalled over similar potential fire-related issues. So very serious, and that's, I worry also about the Jeep and Ram transmissions. BMW sent out recalls for a small number of SUVs because the driver's airbag inflators would blow apart in a crash, causing shards of metal to eject and potentially injure or kill drivers and passengers. Folks, that is unbelievably serious. How did legacy media not properly cover this? This is must know for car shoppers car buyers like you and I. I've had well over 70 vehicles. I'm a big time car buyer. I've never been in an accident except one time at a red light. Someone drove into the back of my vehicle. But if ever, that means maybe I'm due. So I definitely want safe vehicles. Yes, I am on X technically, but I don't go that often. Thank you very much for the question, Highlander Ridgeview. Thank you for posting it back up, so I had more than one chance to pick up on the question. Of course, it's a little harder. Marie now is taking care of our daughter, our baby. She's still young, just about almost 2 months old, and as such, she's not here to cover and watch what's going on in the chat. I'll do my best. Nissan recalled over 463,000 older vehicles because the emblem on the steering wheel could come loose and injure the driver when the airbag is deployed. Again, serious. A majority of these vehicles were Frontier small pickups, larger Titan pickups, Xterra Pathfinder SUVs, and Armada SUV model years 2008 to 2011. Now, Nissan also recalled over 809,000 Rogues. Not a fan of the Rogue, folks. And Rogue Sports, model years 2017 through 2022, over a key related problem that could cause the ignition to shut off mid-drive. That is unbelievably serious. That could cause a serious injury or death, because ignition shutting off when you're driving, mid-drive, means while you are driving, can definitely cause a very severe accident. Hyundai and Kia told 92,000 U.S. owners to park their vehicles outside because of an electronic controller in the oil pump that would should say could overheat and potentially cause fires. Again, a very serious issue. Legacy media missed it like they miss a lot of things. Almost as if legacy media is paid by sponsors and told what to talk about and what to write about by their owners, because almost all legacy media has the same owners, and it's the same group of three that own 88% of the S&P, and that's State Street, BlackRock, and Vanguard. They own 88% of the S&P. So when they've got an agenda that they want to push, a woke, super end of the world climate agenda, both a woke agenda and a climate agenda, well, then you get all these companies following along, the media and all the companies that they own, and they're on record. They've been filmed for saying that they tell CEOs to follow the policies in regards to essentially what it can be described as a woke agenda. Which woke I found incredible. That's an acronym for willingly overlooking known evil. So woke, willingly overlooking known evil. Very interesting, but we'll keep this we'll keep this for the rant. Now, Jaguar also released a recall for 6,000 electric SUVs. This is very serious. Fire-related issue. Specifically, its high-voltage battery could potentially ignite and catch fire. And battery fires are very serious. Everything within a close vicinity will burn, and it is very difficult to put out battery fires. Lithium ion, essentially water feeds lithium ion fires. So if you put really your battery casing, if ever your battery gets punctured and water gets into that battery, you've got a fire. So if you try to put it out with water, that's not the solution. You're just feeding the fire. Now, Volkswagen released a recall on over 143,000 vehicles. Their 2018 to 21 Atlas, as well as the 2020 Atlas Cross Sports, over faulty occupant detection systems in the front passenger seat. That does not sound very serious at all. Would not worry about it. I like Volkswagens, especially ones that hold their value well. So not the Jetta, but the Golf. The Atlas holds its value pretty decently as well, and it's a good looking vehicle. Now, Honda released a recall on several 100,000 new 23 and 24 Accord and HRV, that's their SUV, their small SUV, the HRV vehicles, due to a missing part in the front seatbelt pre-tensioners. This could increase the risk of injury in the event of a crash. So that also sounds kind of serious. How this hasn't properly been covered by legacy media just feeds into my whole notion that we need to question everything, folks, and we also need to do our best to try to hold on to whatever liberty we still have. Well, you can do that by watching this show, staying informed. And we're a small family business, folks, so please think about hitting that thumbs up button. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Think about hitting the subscribe button. If you think that you would like to hear more about this type of automobile information, you're allowed to not like my rants. They're at the end of the show. You can just avoid them altogether. But we do important news coverage on the auto world, the automobile world, auto manufacturers, various brands. We cover the most important topics. So subscribe. Hit that bell notification to not miss out. Now, I really like the next topic here. The next topic is near and dear to me because it's going to make my life less boring. A lot of you are Ford fans, and if you are and you're watching, your life's going to get less boring. So let's cover how Ford is going to be doing what they're done doing boring. So let's just get this episode up and ready. Won't be long now, folks. Just got to get to the correct article. We'll start it in a certain order here. So here we go, episode 2. Welcome to the show, folks. If you're new to the show, I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Glad to have you on board. We're going to be talking about how Ford is done doing boring. This is great news. You're going to enjoy this show. It's going to sort of paint the future for Ford. I've got some insider information and some also commonly accessible information. Now you can read all about this at Ford Authority. We're going to be pasting together a few of their articles and a bit of my insider information to really give you a good idea of where Ford is going. Howdy, 4 high, 4 low. Thank you everyone for making it to the show. Now, if you're watching this as a secondary episode, you can see what people are saying in the live comment. Very knowledgeable community of auto enthusiasts that we are very lucky to have. I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Please consider hitting that thumbs up before we get started, subscribe, and the bell notification so that you don't miss out, because we've got a lot of great information to cover. Live episodes almost every Sunday. Next Sunday, I think I'm gonna have to take it off to finally get some of that Ford Maverick Tremor coverage, because I got one for the weekend last weekend. I might have to take the next weekend off from doing a live to cover that. And that's not a boring vehicle whatsoever. If you have a chance, go down to a dealer, drive a Ford Maverick Tremor, and you're going to see how Ford is done doing boring. But it's going to get more exciting than that. Now remember, Ford has already dropped from the North American market the Fiesta, the Focus. They've dropped the Ford Taurus. They've dropped the Ford Fusion because they're tired of doing boring. So what's next? Well, Ford's CEO Farley did say they're done with boring. He talked about how it doesn't pay. Previously, models like the Ford Fiesta and Focus, they weren't models that brought in a lot of profit. They're known to be a little bit more boring. And there's already a specialist. Now, Jim Farley isn't saying this, I'm saying this. There's already been traditionally a specialist when it comes to boring. Toyota does boring very well, but they also are very reliable. Excuse me. Had something stuck in the throat. Hard to get that one out because I have a 1991 Toyota MR2 in the garage. And gosh, I've done everything on that. Dealt with leaky turbos, leaky turbo, lots, ignition issues, still trying to get it running. But generally, Toyota is very, very reliable. They keep their motors, reuse a lot of their parts, keep their motors around for an extremely long period of time. So of course, the downside of not being boring means more new products, and that means higher risk of having issues. But Jim Farley in the past has also said that, the quality of the product is going to be the number one focus. So I guess Ford not being boring and coming out with some exciting models is going to be second or third on the list of priorities, but it is a priority, and it does mean that we might, we're going to be saying bye to the Ford Edge. The last ones are going to be getting built in March of 2024, if I recall the correct month, but basically springtime of 2024. This is gone, the Edge here. It's been a very reliable vehicle. It makes for a great used purchase, folks. You need a safe, reliable vehicle to do a ton of mileage on. Buy one, but be careful who you buy one from, because remember, these are vehicles with turbos in them, and if the previous owner wasn't very responsible with his or her oil changes, and they're just general maintenance, any vehicle is susceptible to being a bad vehicle if it wasn't taken care of properly. So buy new when you can. Check out the history. Ask for a car report, like a Carfax. An accident report will often show you every time that the vehicle went into the dealership. And you want to see that occurring every roughly 8,000 to 12,000 kilometers. So Ford, they're getting rid of the Edge. And they might very well be getting rid of the Ford Escape. Even though the Ford Escape has been a very reliable vehicle, I think the Ford Escape plug-in is one of the best new family vehicles you can buy these days. That's how I feel. And from what I've seen, other than in the past, if you live in a very salty area, I highly recommend that you undercoat your Ford Escape, because the inside of the doors and the inside of the back hatch are known to rust in very salty environments if you don't undercoat the vehicle. But Ford's done with boring, so they've already cut out a whole lot of vehicles: Fiesta, Focus, Fusion, Ford Taurus. They're also going to be bringing along a lot of exciting new vehicles. So that's a part of this story that I'm really excited about. So let's cover that. We've got a few models that are sort of, you could say, known variables. So let's check that out. We're not necessarily going to be getting this as a model you can buy. I'm waiting to hear more information on that, but Ford did come out with this this electric Ford F-150 that is very much Raptor inspired. We call it the switchgear. What Jim Farley has said is that a lot of the racing tech, so they're going to have a lot of one-off racing vehicles. They're going to have vehicles that they're not necessarily going to go racing with as well. They're going to use to inspire and take tech from and bring into your everyday vehicles bought by everyday people. You know, we've seen the rally edition of the Mach-E, for example. You'll see, you know, that race edition with, what was it, 1,200 or 1,400 horsepower. You've got an electric Transit, which is in over the 1,000 horsepower mark as well. Ford's going to use that technology and spread it all over. So that's what Jim Farley was talking about this past week. And this switchgear model is very impressive. Look at that. So they're racing this around. I think I love seeing that they widened the front arches and back arches and didn't just throw on, you know, wheel well add-ons that are made of plastic. I'm thinking of the Bronco. Would love to see next generation of Bronco to have something like this here, where it's the actual body of the vehicle that sticks out when you throw on wider tires. So Ford's talking about bringing what they learned from these one-off vehicles as well as their race vehicles. Ford's going to be heavy into racing, you know, GT3 racing, GT4 racing. They're going to be bringing this back to models like the Ford F-150s, the Mustangs, the Broncos. We're in for a really exciting ride. And that means the dark horse, which then gets converted into a race vehicle, various race vehicles. Well, the technology from that, they're going to be bringing back to Ford. So very, very cool. We can, you know, see it right here. Ford CEO says racing tech will end up in retail vehicles. So good job, Brett Foote, covering this story January 19th. So you can catch and read about this story. So you can see here, Ford Mustang Dark Horse based racers and a partnership with Red Bull Oracle Racing and Formula One will also help to develop future road-going models too. You know, we had the Ford Super Van, we've had the Ford Mustang Super Cobra Jet 1800, we had the Ford Mustang Mach-E 1400. So you've got full-blown race vehicles, tech coming back to us. We've got those one-off prototypes doing wild stuff, showcasing the direction Ford wants to go. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, not necessarily getting a switchgear, but a Lightning Raptor or Lightning Wildtrak. Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very possible. So quote from Farley here that kind of really goes to send this point home, and it's a home run, by the way. Quote from Farley, "We want to be in the race car business of selling cars. And what's going to connect to our products? We have a Raptor because we raced at Baja. That is exactly the model. We would not have a Mustang GTD if we weren't going to Le Mans. This is the model for Ford. Our R&D, research and development for future vehicles will be on the racetrack. And you will be able to buy them at Ford. And that is really what the circle is all about in our business of racing." So Farley also said that they're done making boring cars. And the CEO did admit that historically, big profit, the boring vehicles were not big profit generators for the company. You think about it, the Ford Explorer ST is a great example. It's the most expensive Explorer, and it's the model everyone wants. So why chase after the low budget vehicles, which it's hard to make low budget vehicles and also have them be reliable unless you sell incredible volume and reuse parts for 20 years. Yes, I'm describing Toyota, interiors that sometimes don't change for 20 years. Little knobs and switches engines, transmissions, suspensions. Sometimes they're keeping those for over 20 years. Yes, very reliable, but you need to sell a whole lot of them for a really long time if you're chasing the low budget. Now, I would like to see, of course, some low budget vehicles, because things are getting really wild out there. Things are getting very expensive. Inflation has been wild, and slowly losing some freedoms is also a topic that worries me. But on a very positive note, you might not like electric vehicles. Well, this is also going to be exciting news for your gas-powered vehicles. Remember, this is the gas-powered Mustang, folks. But exciting news right here. Borla worked on an exhaust speaker, 2 speakers really, that according to Business Insider is going to be $1,600. Couldn't find it for sale, but it's helps your electric truck or your Mach-E sound like it has a V8 engine, and I mean one heck of a V8 engine. So let's listen in on that. Great sound here. Very cool, folks. Very cool. So they're talking about Borla is likely going to come out early on, like they are with the Mach-E, with 4 preset sounds. Later on, you might be able to customize your own sounds, download new V8 sounds, modify them, play around with them. So really exciting. But as you can tell, that is a great sounding exhaust. And you're going to have the choice of multiple different types of V8 sounds to add to your Mach-E, your electric SUV, or your electric truck. This could really change the game, because one thing that's definitely bothered me about my Lightning is the lack of excitement. It's so quick. It's so unbelievably comfortable. It brakes at hard to believe speeds. It accelerates at hard to believe speeds. But because there's no sound, it's hard to maybe believe, but it lacks a lot of excitement. Sound makes up a lot of the experience. Just like smell when you're eating is the majority of what you taste is actually from your nose. Well, I'd like to say that the majority of the driving experience is from the sound of the vehicle. Remember, people were buying vehicles in the 60s. Some of them, even the really high horsepower models were often very slow compared to today's sports cars. And really, some of them were actually slow compared to today's four-door, family movers. So sound makes a big difference. Sound of those tires squealing, smoke in the back, and sound like we just heard make for exciting vehicles. And we know Ford's been on the right track, because look at this Raptor. Beautiful. Look, they're working out the interiors, giving us bigger touchscreens, better materials on the inside. This isn't a 2004 or 2006 Mustang. Beautiful finishes, mixing materials. Even the Maverick, it's pretty much all plastic on the inside, but they mix colors, they mix shapes to make it an exciting interior despite being a plastic interior. Here, maybe you can't see it, but there's little holes in this headrest because there's a speaker, a Bang & Olufsen speaker in each headrest. Ford's done with boring, and I'm happy, because it makes it that I can say after basically 11 years, I'm definitely not done with Ford. I'm just getting started. I am very excited to be working for Ford, and I think many of you, Ford dealer, I think many of you will enjoy the Ford product. And I have other models of vehicles too. My garage right now has a 1991 Toyota MR2 sitting in it that I've worked on it in the 2000s. Still working on it because it's not starting. Even though I've redone the turbo, all the intercooling system, they've redone the exhaust. So much of that vehicle has been rebuilt. A lot of help from friends and professionals. But I do what I can when I can. But the Ford Raptor, the F-150, the Raptor Bronco, hoping to have a Raptor Ranger, but Ford hasn't scheduled me yet. This week I saw that they've scheduled for early March 2 regular XLTs, but they have not scheduled my Raptor, and I do hope that they will. So Borla exhaust, sound, dual speaker that can be thrown on your Mach-E. That's exciting. It'd be great. Ford, please throw this on. If you make a Ranger Raptor Lightning, throw it on. Make it part of the kit. Do business with Borla. I think that's a good company to be doing business with. Now, we're going to continue the show, and it's only getting better. I really like the topic coming up. We're going to be talking about Bronco wait times, so let's get to that. Whew. But just a reminder, look at this. Love Instagram. Love that Mr. Levine brought to Instagram. Some of the excitement going down here with this switchgear. This I don't think is necessarily going to be a mass-produced model. Maybe it's just me. I think it's the one-off model in the comment section. Help me out here. But I think this means that we're going to get a Lightning Raptor or similar, maybe a Lightning Tremor. But this very much looks more like Raptor territory. Helps Ford stay in the game because models like this generate excitement. Like what was it? 15 years ago, I was going on how Ford needed a Corvette model. They needed a Corvette competitor because even if you don't sell that many Ford's version of a Corvette, every brand needs that hard to attain halo model, which brings people in. The Corvette brings excitement to GM, and people are, it's a little easier to swallow the pill of buying your family vehicle, but from the company that makes your dream vehicle. So Ford, please fuel our dreams, continue to fuel our dreams. But please do come out with a Corvette competitor under the Lincoln brand or under the Ford brand. Really under both would be great. But look at those Recaro seats inside that switch gear. Very, very cool. Call it the switch gear, even though the vehicle has no gears, but it's Ford switching gears. Now, Bronco wait times were bad, but they're getting better. There's a lot to say about that. So this is an interesting story to cover right here. For those that were frustrated with not getting their Bronco, I can tell you a few of the things that Ford did to help get us our Broncos. Originally, they're going to send Broncos to South America, such as Argentina. And even now, they're only going to be sending the Wild Track model. So Ford has waited until most of the people, almost everyone on the original waiting list, if not everyone, has gotten their Ford Bronco. If you made a few modifications, you would have already gotten it. But they wanted to do their best to feed the Canadian and US market before sending them down south, even though originally the plan was to send them down south. But when they saw how insane the demand for these vehicles were, they put the project on pause. They took care of their main purchasers from the last, decades and decades. Now they're going to be sending only the Wild Track model down to Argentina. So that's one of the things that Ford did. They also, of course, made sure that they started this new program called confirmed orders, so COVP, confirmed order vehicle process. So dealers needed to prove they had a real client in front of them so that dealers can just order these vehicles under, a random name that they threw into the system so that they could get one of these and sell them over markup. And Ford also had a turn and earn program, meaning when these vehicles would come in, how quickly you sold them would help dictate how many you would get in the future. And of course, you needed to deliver the vast majority to the people you ordered them for. So this was made to avoid, hey, cousin, call them up, cuz, send me your picture of your driver's license, and then just go, here, we got a buyer rate here, knowing that, whatever cousin of the dealer employee is making, $12 an hour, would never afford it, but they've got his picture, they order it under this person's name, it shows up, then they ask 25,000 over MSRP for it. Well, Ford worked hard to get rid of that, because if dealers weren't delivering to the majority of the people that they ordered the vehicle for, because Ford was not sending any retail Broncos they weren't sending any dealer stock Broncos to the dealerships, because they wanted to actually feed the real customer orders. That they worked hard to make sure that the dealers were putting in real customers, and that they were getting these Broncos to the real customers and not sending dealers inventory. However, today, it's a different story. Some customers, more and more, aren't taking their orders that come in, and there's room to actually send dealers inventory. So big news there. Look on the internet, make phone calls. If you work a little hard, you will find an available Bronco. You might even find an available hardtop Bronco. We have 2 hardtop Broncos at the dealership right now out of 6. And the others are soft top. We're on our 3rd Bronco, and this one we absolutely want to keep. We've got it just right. Wild Track with the Haas 3.0 suspension. Your regular Sasquatch will have Haas 2.0 suspension, which is also very good. We love the Badlands model, but right now we have a Wild Track. Very happy with it. Had owned a Badlands 2.7 liter V6 twin turbo. Also a Sasquatch Outer Banks. So Marie and I each had our Bronco because we love the vehicle that much. After selling the second one, felt like we had made a mistake and put in an order for one. And we waited on our third and last Bronco. We waited maybe 6-7 months for it. Well worth the wait. Very happy with the soft top, even though we live in a very cold climate. Don't be fooled. People will tell you can't take a soft top if you live in a snowy, cold climate, but we live in a very snowy, very cold, salt-soaked climate. And our 2 first Broncos did 2 winters each, never had any issues cleaning off that soft top. Come springtime, have videos about that, so catch our channel. We try to do the best we can to keep you informed in ways that will help save you thousands or save headaches. So we've talked about washing the hardtop Bronco. Basically, don't put the pressure washer too close to that. That cloth will open up if the pressure washer is too powerful and too close to the material. But do consider buying a Bronco. Test drive the soft top. You'll find more soft tops out there. You can probably get a soft top, shop for it and have one in your yard within 7 business days. And in our area, new Broncos, most dealers that I've been going through aren't selling the ones that are available over MSRP. And if you make a lot of phone calls, you check the internet, and within an 8-hour radius of where you're living, you can't get one at MSRP, well, order one from Long MacArthur. Ford video guy with Tim Bartz at Long MacArthur. He'll take good care of you if you're in the States. So we were waiting a really, really long time for Broncos in the past, but Ford did what they could to get us our Broncos in a timely fashion, didn't just send them down to South America like they had originally, basically told the South American market, you're going to get Broncos, and then it was, sorry, we've got too many in the Canadian and US market. So thankfully, they're remembering that, we've been buying Fords from them for a long time. Our fathers and mothers bought Fords from them, and our grandfathers bought Fords from them, and they stayed true to their true, loyal, original buyers. Thank you, Ford. Thank you, Ford, for cracking down on dealers and working hard on that as well. Good job on you, Ford. I know we waited a long time. I know there was a lot of frustration, but nothing can ever be, perfect. Ford did their best to get shady dealers out, to get them less Broncos, to send more Broncos to good dealers that followed the rules. And Ford Video Guy, I love that. Some rebates, it looks like. I read that quickly, but I think I read about rebates for stock Broncos at Long MacArthur. Make sure, ask for Tim Bartz. And if I'm wrong, whoever picks up the phone, I'm sure will, put you through the right channels. But I would definitely drop Tim Bart's Ford Video Guy's name. Tell them that's who sent you, or Johnny sending you to Tim. I'd love my name to show up. Tim can be like, hey, my friendship is worth something. I want to be useful here. Tim is a friend, and I do hope that I can figure it out. But if I do go down to Florida to meet the community in maybe more April, it looks like I would be doing it on my own, because I don't think Marie and I will be able to do it with such a young daughter, only 2 months old now, as well as the two pooches. Now, once she's over a year, maybe we can make the trip down driving like we have the last two winters in the past, in which we did meet up with members from the community. Now, thank you so much, folks. Really appreciate you staying tuned into this show. Numbers are higher than when we started. Really appreciate that. We're going to talk about a topic I think is really important. Coming up, like right now, we've got a big issue on our hands. Things cost so much more than they used to. Inflation has been blamed on us consumers for spending too much. That's not the real cause of inflation. The real cause of inflation is printing off money and not spending it on things that put money into the pockets of us, people living within the country. Remember, governments, when they spend money, that's our tax dollars. And what got a major reason the United States got out of the Great Depression is they did a lot of projects, big road work projects, monuments. They essentially, yes, you could say printed money, but they gave money back into the hands of working people within their borders. They didn't just send money overseas. So printing money is the main reason for inflation, and that's why the next topic is near and dear. We're going to be talking about used Ford F-150s and how they are a great buy. So let's check this out. So Ford F-150s, we've got them down as a great buy. And just need to get over and find the slot I want to cover here. So we've got this down here. It won't be long, folks. Lightning production, of course, is a story that's well worth covering. But this story basically is covering the F-150 and how it's been marked as a vehicle to do over 200,000 miles with. And if I can't get this story down, because I like to show proof, I like to show data. And if I can't get that, well, you know what? We'll just have to cut to the next topic, leave it for next week's show. Looks like I put in too many episodes this week. And that can happen from time to time. Can't blame a guy for wanting to cover too much news, but essentially an F-150 is a great vehicle. The article talks about 10-year-old F-150s, but if I was looking at a 2013, 2014 F-150, that essentially if you're in a salty area, so that's not an area where people are salty, but I mean an area where they throw salt and calcium on the roads, I would get a 2015, because if you go to 2015 F-150, you're going to be getting a better deal, because 2015 F-150 panels are aluminum, roughly 30% more resistant to dents, and they don't corrode. I've been taking a lot of trades in 2015, 2016, 2017. Those panels are beautiful at Ford. I'm taking in some even as early as 2019, 2020 Rams and GMs, and I am seeing some rust that I have to send off and get properly fixed. We don't just, quick sand and spray can here. We send them to a professional that really gets it down to the bare metal, builds everything back up, not just a quick scrub Bondo job, but actually gets the rust down to the bare metal, the panel down to the bare metal to get rid of all the rust. But a Ford F-150 is within the top 10 list of best vehicles to buy for the money. And let me explain to you how that works. Now, this is a great article if you want to go and find it. This is again on Ford Authority, Brett Foote. Excellent job, Brett Foote. So they're talking, he got this information from another article at IC Cars, and IC Cars looked over a whole lot of data to come up with their top 10 best vehicles to buy. So we're going to be checking that out right here. So the company did identify the models with the longest lifespan, and the F-150 did pop up on that. Your cost of ownership, it's not a big difference. The Ford F-150 was ranked 8th, but the average was only about $700 off for ownership. So they're saying that they look at average price tag to buy, but then of course it's about how much life is left in that vehicle. So they're saying that your average F-150 should be able to have a lifespan on average of 232,650 miles. Now on average, however, the cost would be $19,552, so a $300 difference, but 102,437 miles of a usable lifespan. So the Ford F-150 here has a very good lifespan. 232,650 miles, that's average. That means if you maintain well the vehicle. If the previous owner, really if you're buying used, if you're buying new, it means these are good signs to buy a new F-150. If you're buying used, it's easy to read this and say, like a lot of Toyota fans will do, oh yeah, they have this idea like all Toyotas, all of them are going to last a long time. And I'm sorry, folks, but previous ownership is so important. How the previous owner actually treated the vehicle, you can take the most reliable manufacturer and on average, the most reliable model from the most reliable manufacturer, just the market's overall most reliable vehicle, and it can give you some serious problems and be a serious nightmare if it wasn't properly maintained. So ask for that Carfax report. Check out, get a history on the vehicle. Now, the top 20 cars had a overall potential lifespan on average of 200,000 miles according to IC Cars. They went over a ton of data. So I love data. I love it when people and companies do that properly. Because data, it's a whole lot harder to tweak than just making up a list and saying based on, reviewing things from forums, or based on, let's say you only look at 100, on average, 100 buyers, 100 owners per model across all the models on the market, and say, well, based on 100 picked at random, 100 is not enough of a sample group to actually, there's way too much error and untruth that can come about by only using 100 people, owners, as a sample group. But yes, the Ford F-150 has an incredible lifespan. So you want to check that out. You can check it out either at IC Cars or check out the article that Brett Foote wrote over at Ford Authority. It is a good one, a very, very good one. Now, I'm Johnny for Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. We're a small family business. Right now, just me, because Marie isn't here to take the notes, answer the people in the chat. So thank you, people who come in every week into the chat and write in the chat. I'm sorry Marie's not here to address important issues. I try to catch what I can, but it is very difficult to have, be partially reading while also creating this show. This isn't pre-recorded. This is, these are the notes. So the notes fit on one page. I'm not just reading off of pages and I can just put, pause. I don't have a teleprompter off to the side. I can't just hit a little button, put it on pause, and talk to you all. So I do my best to still answer what's going on in the chat. And of course, throw in the comments at the end of the show. Once the show becomes an episode, throw in some comments. I'll do my best to get to you. But please do encourage the small family business. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, turn the bell notification on so you don't miss out on important information. And yes, The F-150 is on this list, but I think there's a lot of really good Toyota models, such as the RAV4, that are very much worth looking at. The Ford Escape is an excellent vehicle to look at, and you can actually just look at all the New York taxis and San Francisco taxis that have insane amounts of mileage on them, and they're still going. And generally, the hybrid model of the Escape has traditionally been fantastic as a taxi, sticking to the same motor and transmission and even the same battery pack, but being on, their fourth interior. That's a news story to look into. You can find information about that on YouTube. But the Ford Escape, Ford's done hybrids unbelievably well. So folks, let's get to the last topic of the night before a potential rant. I've got a family waiting for me. I'm in the dedicated office right now. I've got a little girl to kiss and put to bed, and Marie's doing a good job of getting up all night, many times a night. Layla's being very difficult at night, so Marie's probably tired and would love to see me before we go to bed, but I'm in the office now. I hope the sound's gotten a lot better over the years because I've built a dedicated office here. Really appreciate it, Highlander. I love getting back to you folks. I love seeing repeat commentators. And let's say there's some periods of time where I have less time. Well, of course, I focus on, I try to find the members and focus in on their questions first, and then repeat, not a repeat offenders, because, well, there's no repeat offenders here in our community. We're probably because we all had dads that stuck around, and that has a major influence on whether you become a criminal or not, because most of the people, the majority of the people who are in prison did not have a father figure. And that's a major issue, how media is trying to tear apart families, discourage family, the whole family unit. And we've got to ask ourselves, who runs the media? But that's more of a rant topic. Let's get to actual topic 5. Let's talk about Lightning planned production, but it's a top seller. So how does that work? How do you have a truck be a top seller, but that you still plan on cutting production? Well, let's get to the bottom of that story. Just got a time mark here. If you're coming into the show as a separate episode, I'm Johnny from Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Before we get into this interesting story, please think about hitting the thumbs up button. And don't forget to subscribe and the bell notifications so you don't miss out. We're going to be covering here at Johnny's Car Care and Reviews all the most important stories and occasionally test driving a vehicle, and of course talking about car care, because I don't want anyone ruining their paint jobs, getting their vehicles rusted up or ruined. So I cover the need to know information on car ownership, and I love doing it. So let's talk about Lightning production. This is an interesting one. And I'm not surprised that this one's getting misinterpreted because it's a little hard to follow, mostly because of big media. They've got catchy titles often, but a little harder to follow the real story, because a lot of the story that's being covered is how Lightning production is just cut. And you think, wow, it's cut in half. Didn't they only make 30, 40,000 this year? Wow, things must be going horribly for electric vehicles. This must be the end of electric vehicles. I'm here to tell the truth, not make money. And the truth is, I can almost say for some, unfortunately, electric vehicles aren't going anywhere. And it is part of a forced agenda by the government, very much forced. Manufacturers have a choice: go bankrupt or go electric. And it's a wild story, because when you go electric, it's only good for the environment, really, if ideally the source of your electricity needs to be clean. We can't just put online all sorts of coal plants or burning, they call them fossil fuels, but they're not from dinosaurs. There is so much oil underneath the Earth's crust, even though there was a decade, of course, where they said we're going to run out of oil. Dumbest thing that was said, and it was all about taking away people's liberties and adding more taxes. Excuse to add more taxes, just like I think the CO2 climate change hoax is a hoax. It's about adding to our taxes. But I think electric vehicles are great. I own one. I love my electric vehicle most days, but I hate the idea of being forced an electric vehicle. I hate the idea of electricity going up because there's a higher demand that can't be met without creating, because for some reason we're closing down nuclear plants, even though when done safely with new technology, you've got nuclear plants that are a very environmentally friendly, when done properly, solution. Orlando OBX, good night, my friend. But it's planned production. Let's talk about this EV thing going. EVs are continuing to sell more. EV sales are going up every year, but Ford is planning on cutting back on their planned production because they planned on making, well, just a few too many. They really, remember, if you go back a few years, Ford wouldn't stop saying, we're going to double production. We're going to double again production. They doubled production a bunch of times, and now they realize, well, that insanely high planned production is more than the market wants. We're not ready to go fully in bed and, marry before getting in bed, but marry and then fully get in bed with electric vehicles. We're not all ready for that, but it is a growing segment every year. So Ford's pushed back some of their investment. They've pushed back not their current production. It's going to continue to slowly grow, but not grow at quite the high rate they had planned. So this isn't a story for the end of EVs. And some are presenting it as a story that it's, the end of EVs, because that's what the majority, I think, probably of current buyers want. But there's still a growing segment. So the Ford F-150 Lightning was part of the top 10 best-selling EVs last year, and there are a lot of EVs on the models on the market right now. So this is from Ford Authority. You can read on the article. It's also from Cox Automotive, another great place to get story information on this. So let's see. You've got 24,156 sales in 2023 of the Ford F-150 Lightning. And that meant it ranked 8th as the 8th best-selling EV last year, behind the Tesla Model Y. So it would have been number 1 with 394,497 units. Tesla Model 3, almost 221,000 units. Chevy Bolt, 62,000 units. I'm rounding off by a few here. Ford Mustang Mach-E, 40,700 units. Volkswagen ID4, 37,700 units, plus some change. Hyundai Ioniq 5, basically almost 34,000 units. And the Rivian, it's funny, the Rivian, which was financially backed by Ford, well, the Rivian R1S sold better than the Lightning. Oopsie-doozy, Ford. But Ford actually was really smart with this investment. They invested hard on Rivian. When Rivian shares were really, really high, Ford sold some of those shares and made a fortune. A really smart business move. I've got to applaud Jim Farley. If he made that call to sell those shares when they were at a mint premium, then wow. I wish I could partake. This would be rant topic to get into ancient civilizations and how we have some areas in the planet that have nuclear radiation, but we're talking about dating back thousands and thousands of years. Very interesting topic, but pretty much off topic at the moment. And then you finally have the Tesla Model X. So you know what? What's interesting is the Lightning beat out a Tesla model, the Tesla Model X, with 23,000 units, and the BMW i4 with 22,583 units. So BMW came in 10th position. Ford came in 8th position, and Tesla has a couple of the top 5 positions. No surprise there. They're the OGs, the original gangsters, the OGs when it comes to electric vehicles, somewhat. Because don't forget, Ford had, not as a prototype, they made a few hundred or a few thousand electric Ford Rangers back in the 90s. They had the hybrid Escape back in 2003. So Ford has been in the electric game, and it actually goes all the way back to the origins of Ford, when Henry Ford and his wife had a nice little conversation. Apparently, she had been asked if she thought electric vehicles would be better or gasoline-powered vehicles. And if I recall correctly, Henry Ford's wife preferred electric vehicles. She had said, well, you should go into this electric vehicle business. It's very interesting. And because where society, where the money was going, Henry Ford went with gasoline-powered vehicles. So very interesting right there. So that's the end of this story. Nice little story for the Ford F-150 Lightning. It's not going anywhere. If you hate electric vehicles and you fall for the headlines that say Ford cut their planned production and it makes you happy, I'm sorry. I'm also frustrated. I'm sorry it's just not the case, but I'm also frustrated that we're being forced these vehicles. But please don't hate on Ford for making electric vehicles. It is, it really is follow the policy or go bankrupt in the process situation. If manufacturers don't fall in line and don't have above 50 mile per gallon fleet averages very soon, they're going to go out of business. Already, companies like Stellantis, just across their Dodge and Ram brand, can lose billions of dollars each year because too many of their sales are going towards, let's say the V8 Charger and V8 Challenger. So when you've got a lot of sales going towards that part of your model segment, your fleet, you have low, because we all know Chargers and Challengers get pretty poor fuel economy. Great, okay for a V8, but overall poor fuel economy, and that was costing that company, that manufacturer, billions of dollars. Now, they could have paid it to the government as fines, but of course you can buy carbon credits from Tesla, only making your competitor, you're essentially paying your competitor to dig your own grave. It's like, I'm not going to dig my own grave, but here's money. Go dig a grave for me. I'm going to continue to have fun spinning tires and accelerating really quickly with this Hemi engine, and I'm going to drive nose first into that grave that I paid Tesla to dig for me. So it's a do or die situation, and that's about policy. If you don't like that, don't hate on Ford, don't hate on Dodge for getting, rid of the V8 Hemi in their Challenger and Charger. Vote differently if it really bothers you. Now, that brings us into a rant, folks. We're in rant territory. Gonna have to be reasonable this evening with the rant. Let me just take a little sip of water. I've been talking for over an hour now. So let's check out a few slides, and then what we could get into is a few videos. I think we all need to be aware of something. This is a joke. We'll start the rant really on the lighter side of things. This was from TC Customs on Instagram. Good team over there. So it says, since a lot of you don't know the difference, grammar is important. Brakes. So what brakes look like, folks? And that's how you spell it, with BRAKES. And this is how you spell breaks, as in breaks down, as in no longer functions or doesn't function on a regular basis. Brakes, BREAKS. So that was your Sesame Street inspired segment of the rant. Spell correctly, especially when you're insulting someone. Sometimes people insult me in the comments section, and that's fine, but please use data and spell things correctly. It doesn't, like, your insult doesn't seem nearly as legitimate when there's no data and you spell things incorrectly. It almost kind of, it's not even a dialogue or a debate. It's just a bad post. So yes, rants are back, folks, for those people that make it to the end of our lives. Now, this is pretty wild. I think we live in a time in which we all need to, one, have a lot of kindness towards one another, avoid violence at all costs, but be aware of the passive aggressions being done to us, our traditions, our, just essentially Western civilization. Young people in the universities are being mentally programmed to despise Western civilization, to despise those that have built the societies that we live in, and they're programmed into really, really admiring and not thinking twice about supporting whoever is against Western Civilization, the WB, thank you for being here. Mint Diggity, thank you very much. Ridgeview, thank you for always staying to the end. Ridgie, you're a trooper. The WB as well, like you guys always make it to the end of these. And even though, you know, many of you, well, I love it. Sometimes in the comment section, it's Johnny, I don't agree with you, but I respect the fact that you're willing to take a risk and express yourself. You know, freedom of speech, we need to practice it so unbelievably regularly. Remember, freedom of speech is more important than hurting someone's feelings. Freedom of speech is a right, and it cannot be overthrown and put in a corner and really terminated because people's feelings could be hurt. Because there'll always be people who have feelings that are just a little too wishy-washy, that they don't have strong enough backbones, and we need to get to making society strong again. We need to be making men and women strong. We need to not poo-poo all over Western civilization and all the wonders and comfort that it has given us and be weak because of those comforts, and really just fully support dangerous segments of what is slowly becoming our society because of open borders with absolutely no criteria for who comes into those borders. So you can see that the system, we'll be looking through some what I'm going to call slides, even though they're not slides, but my father was a university professor and I just grew up going through slides. So I'm sorry, I love the term little projector with the little slides inside of them. Well, let's call them slides, folks. Just because something is the old way of doing things doesn't mean it's wrong. And that's part of the problem. Nowadays, universities are essentially teaching, programming young people to think anyone older than you is a dummy. Even the education system in which we send our kids to school, they're essentially telling our kids, your parents are horrible people if they don't agree with this pre-programmed brainwashing that we're going to put you through. Apparently, you're supposed to like be in awe of someone's courage for going into an elementary school dressed up in a very provocative manner and shaking your junk in front of little children. That's awful. This needs this. That's, you know, if you want to express that verbally and say that you think that's somehow going to make society better, well, that's freedom of speech is fine, but it's not freedom of all actions. Some things should not be done because they're grotesque, and we need to protect children. We also need to protect the people who are in the right. This is a disgusting story. We've got Daniel Penny, 24 years old, put a homeless felon in a fatal chokehold to stop him from attacking people on his New York train. This is potentially, possibly a hero. Possibly. You know, unless there's things that we don't know about this story and he just randomly attacked a homeless guy on the train. But if he truly stopped a homeless felon from attacking people on a New York train, he's potentially a hero. His bail, $200,000, meaning he's gonna marinate in prison in the juices of the prison system. So his life's in danger. However, last week you've got this other individual, 22 years old. So we're talking about the same age group here. Not that laws should be different for different age groups. That would be ageism. But he broke into a New York home. Now at this point, had the owner, you know, shot and killed him, I'd say that owner, you know, is probably a hero. This is a home invader. But no, unfortunately, this individual then, you know, did horrible, vile sexual acts to a woman at knife point. He was released without bail. What's going on, folks? Are we so afraid of being, you know, of what's going on? You know, it's, you know, Islamophobia is horrible. Horrible. You shouldn't treat people horrifically because of their religion. That's awful. But you shouldn't also treat them, you shouldn't create horrific actions like keeping this individual a violent criminal, not yet proven, but quite possibly a very violent criminal, dangers of committing the crime. You've got a guy who protected a trainload of people from a homeless felon who was attacking people on the train, 200,000 bail. And you've got this other individual, no bail, very dangerous. However, apparently, it must be this white guy's white privilege making it that he's got a $200,000 bail, meaning if someone doesn't cough up $200,000, he's going to go to jail. And some horrible things could happen to him. He could be marinating in the prison system's marination prison juices if he doesn't cough up $200,000. This is ridiculous. Islamophobia or fear of Christians or fear of Jewish individuals, fear of anyone who's part of a religion, unless there's really good reason to fear the actual individual, but fear of an entire religion, horrible. Being so afraid of offending someone and hurting someone's feelings that you take a dangerous individual and you release them back into society, that's ridiculous. So that's the type of world we're living in these days, and you got to question everything, folks. Now, here's something else, a little interesting. Now, whatever happened to those high-profile pedophiles? So when you're part of the elite system, it's pretty awful. Remember Epstein's private island got raided. This was years ago. They confiscated computers, hard drives. I believe it was the FBI from memory, various electronic devices, along with 20,000 images from Epstein's mansion in Manhattan. And there hasn't been a single arrest other than, his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. I think I pronounced that actually quite correctly based on the horrible actions that were done by these two. Ridiculous. So FBI raid leads to 0 arrests of high-profile pedophiles. Now, this is also wild. We got to remember that it's important. Be kind to one another, but be vigilant. Question everything. And we need to I think we're probably going to have to find some sort of way to exercise peacefully our disagreement with where the system is going currently. I think it's wild anytime that someone gets outside of the law gets removed from a ballot, but you've got Trump's name will appear on the Colorado Republican primary ballot due to the Supreme Court's willingness to hear the case. However, the Colorado Secretary of State said she will not count any ballots that have Donald Trump's name on them. Wow, that is, I don't see how that's legal. I really don't see how this individual is behaving in a legal manner, and I'm waiting to see if there'll actually be any consequences. Now, of course, the head individual for the electoral system in Maine is doing the same thing, and I think that is ridiculous. Question everything here. Remember, we had wildfires last summer, and I guess some of them weren't all that wild because you had a Quebec climate change conspiracy theorist pleading guilty to starting 14 of the fires in Quebec that smoked out North America. So this individual, Brian Parry, 38, pleaded guilty to starting 14 of the forest fires, including the one on Lake Cavan, in a courthouse in Chibougamau, Quebec. So this isn't fake news. 2 of the 14 fires set by him had forced the evacuation of around 500 homes. So some of those fires were actually human caused. I'd love to know what apparently lightning was the other cause. But climate change is such a difficult topic to cover, because is climate change just part of the cycle between glacial periods to heating up periods to then back to glacial periods that we've seen over the course of history? All I know is that if we have less than most politicians creating these laws don't know how much CO2 is in the environment. There's a great skit that I might be able to get to tonight where politicians who are, changing our lives, taxing us more. In Canada, we're going to be spending roughly 30% more for fuel because the government has added a crazy, insane another tax on tax. Our gasoline and our home heating fuel already is taxed horrifically. Half of it was already taxed. They're adding another 30%. Why? CO2 in the atmosphere. They don't even know how much is CO2 is in the atmosphere, because they're just making policy so that they can tax us more, steal our money, and remove our freedoms. We have, if ever, we had 0.02 parts CO2 in the atmosphere, the vegetation on Earth would die. So essentially we'd face extinction. We were at 0.03 at one point. No kidding. There's glaciers and ice covering most of the planet, and very, very few humans, and many, many less animals. Then, glaciers melted. We got into farming. We got outside of living in caves underground for safety and for warmth. Of course, if you get under a certain level of dirt, you have a stable temperature. I believe it's 10 degrees Celsius once you go so many feet underground. So there's civilizations living underground to get that warmth, because up top, most of the planet was covered in ice. Of course, when we came out of that period, what did we get? We got farming. We had animal populations exploding, human populations exploding. And the big result is we went from 0.03 particulates parts of carbon in the atmosphere to 0.04. My gosh, we've had 0.07 before. I believe it was before the last glacial period. Prior to that glacial period, we've had up to 0.07 parts carbon. So we've got room for more carbon, folks, but here we have all sorts of taxes. So feds, here's another issue, question everything. We're gonna have to find some sort of very peaceful way to get a bit of freedom back into our lives and not be surveilled. This is ridiculous. Feds monitor bank records for gun and Bible purchases, and words like MAGA and Trump. Wow. Paying taxes so that you can be spied on. That's like people that make TikTok videos half naked for free. At least they're not paying TikTok to get to make those half naked videos and degrade themselves, or sometimes naked videos to degrade themselves. But we actually do pay the government, and it's wild. Now, things are starting to unwind a little, because often throughout history, you go from one extreme to another extreme. Now we're in an extreme of wokeness. So talked about what the acronym for woke is earlier. I thought that was interesting. Someone in the chat, if you can remember what it was. My brain's a little frozen right now, but essentially it was willingly. Essentially, it's about willingly going towards evil, the known evil. The K and the E are known evil, but willingly. Can't remember what it was, but knowing, going towards known evil. So, interesting enough, going down to the Texas border. There a lot of the illegal immigrants that have been coming in have been military-aged men. You've got some TikTok videos showing them coming in with little cards that have money already set up on them. Some people even worrying that potentially these are, potentially future UN soldiers, because there's UN tanks, UN vehicles, UN equipment in the United States. I know I have one friend who was at the trucker rally, and that's the rally on Parliament, that, we're protesting our removal of liberties in Canada. And he said that he was there when everything got broken up and people got pushed around and arrested. And not only were Canadians' bank accounts illegally frozen, some people just for sending money to the trucker rally, but there's people who are going to be in prison for a very long time. It's still, over 700 days in prison with no charges against them because they're at the trucker rally. But they said that those were UN soldiers that broke it up, because the city police, the provincial police, and the Mounties did not, didn't want to break the law in breaking up a peaceful protest, but that it was UN soldiers, that they were speaking an Eastern European language. Whatever reason, it seems like Canadian and US governments want illegal immigrants coming in. They've got these open borders. Texas has finally made a stand and said enough is enough. Texas is saying that it seems like the federal government was willingly letting individuals in. One thing we do know is that the federal government is telling the Texas military and Texas police officers to get out of there. They want to open up that border again. But you've got a lot of states, all these red states here. Those are states that are in support of Texas, willing to send soldiers, willing to send police officers down to the Texas border to help them, to help them protect the border. I think people are starting to see that having all sorts of illegal immigrants where you're not choosing who immigrates to your country based on, what can they provide to your country. It doesn't mean people need to come in with money. That's not what the American, that's not how Canada and the United States were built. They're built by poor people mostly coming in from other countries, but they had some skills. They're bricklayers, they're construction workers, they're lawyers and doctors. And we want to have some sort of vetting process where you can say, oh, you're a known terrorist. No, you can't come into the country. You're not welcome here. Or you've committed violent crimes in your original country. You know what? You can go back. We don't want you here. So it's pretty wild that even just, I think, part of the whole woke agenda is someone that expresses what I just expressed. They need to be canceled because they're racist. It's not about color, folks. It's about safety, and it's about doing what is best for our future. We're all immigrants here, basically. We just want what's best for our future. So in more corrupt news, you've got the brothers who killed Ethan Liming, I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, stomped on his chest, broke his neck, and took his car at LeBron's James school, sentence only 6 months and the other 18 months. Now you've got a New Jersey man who went viral in 2021 for racist outburst, sentenced to 8 years in prison. Think about that. Verbal racism is bad. It's really bad. But 8 years in prison versus 2 murderers killing this guy and 6 months and 18 months in jail. One 6 months, the other 18 months in jail. So I'm starting to think that, when the Bible said that in the end times, what is good will be seen as evil and what is evil will be seen as good. I think this is a case of we're getting close to that. Now, it is bad. It is evil to be racist. It's evil to be racist, and you shouldn't be having racist outbursts on the internet. However, what gets defined as hate speech, that's what's dangerous. Going against the woke agenda or against vaccines is being, that can be considered, it's easy to say, oh, that's hate speech just because it goes against the narrative, against BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street's narrative that they're forcing corporations to take on, that they're forcing governments to take on. Remember, we've got the WHO, the World Health Organization, not elected. They're not elected. None of them are elected. They're passing legislation and have passed legislation for over 150 countries to be able to, for the reasons of climate change, for the reasons of our health, for the protection of water and the protection of animal lives, because animal lives, according to them, are now at the same level as a human life. Well, to protect animal lives, the climate, health, the water system, they can pass laws that go against a country's constitution, that goes against the most basic freedoms and protections that individuals have in that country, like we saw during COVID, telling you that you can't go to work, telling you to stay home, telling you where you cannot drive, what hours you can drive, how many people can be in your house, none, that they can do that essentially for what could basically be categorized as anything they want. They can take away all our freedom because they feel like it. And in Europe, it's getting very serious what they consider to be hate speech and what they can throw people in prison for. But a New Jersey man considered, labeled throwing out hate speech, sentenced to 8 years in prison. It's black and white right there from Yahoo News and The Independent. And you've got 2 murderers doing a violent crime, not just violent words. Racism, hate speech is violent words. 8 years in prison for violent words. Yes, words hurt feelings and all and whatnot, but no one dies from hurt feelings generally. And you've got this individual dead. So what's going on with society? We got to stand up and speak out to say what's right and what's wrong. And those are things that are wrong. Yes, we can all agree that there should be some form of punishment for racism. That usually the term racism is about action, but here we've got verbal, not quite an action, I would say, but that's just my opinion, that's just my viewpoint. But still, you express something that verbally is racist, I can understand a certain punishment. I have trouble understanding 8 years, but I'm not a specialist in law here. But when it's more of a punishment, more of a sentence than murder, we've got a real problem on our hands, and we've got to be able to stand up and say, no, that's not right. That's not okay. We're not willing to sit back and say that we're okay with that. Now, finishing this up here, the reason we've got to question everything, unfortunately, it's because, well, we've got to question everything.
Roberto Speranza is under investigation for homicide after emails reveal that from the very start of the vaccinations, he knew the shots were killing people and gave orders to local health authorities to conceal deaths and serious side effects in order to reassure Italian citizens of their safety and to not jeopardize the vaccination campaign. The story has been reported on both German and Italian news networks. I will now provide an English translation. The Rome Public Prosecutor's Office is investigating Roberto Speranza, the Italian government's health minister, during the time of COVID measures. He was responsible for the vaccination campaign. The investigations are the result of complaints related to the so-called AIFA emails from the Italian Medicines Agency. The former director of AIFA, Nicola Magrini, is also under investigation. The publication of these internal emails revealed that they had been aware of the dangers of the COVID vaccination from the start.
So yeah, we've got to question everything, and when our freedoms are taken away and we don't even get to decide whether we want to take a medication or not, that we're forced, that millions and millions of dollars are put into sort of brainwashing us into a commercial, like all the main talk shows, the commercials, the TV shows, they're all pushing the vaccine and not, we're in Canada, we're removed freedoms. You can go to the gym. You can go to many places if you weren't vaccinated. You couldn't take a plane and a train, for example, because you weren't vaccinated. And in the end, we should still be questioning the vaccine. Not saying it's bad, but it's definitely worth questioning here.
This country will be showing a graph coming from the Philippine Statistics Authority, and sa DOH meron din po silang mga copies that have been submitted, datas, and we are shocked to find out that there were 262,000 deaths on 2021 alone. And after that, 2022, nagkaroon pa rin ng 67,000 deaths. And these are all unexplained deaths, no? And that's the reason why this committee is, I think, motu proprio, we will be investigating this.
So congratulations to this Honorable Dan S. Fernandez in the Philippines for standing up and questioning what's going on. Congratulations to the insurance companies that are sitting back and questioning the unexplained deaths. That should be less now that we've mostly all have the vaccine. But no, we've got all these unexplained deaths. What is going on? We've got to question what is going on. We've got to be, most importantly, we just have to be allowed to question. It can't be made, people can't be forced out of questioning what the heck is going on. Lost my place here. Now, I also worry about what's going to be going down. Of course, I worry about expressing my freedom of speech, because my speech can get me in a lot of trouble. Worries Marie quite a bit. So I appreciate all your support. People who've tried to talk out in the past, we've got, Robert F. Kennedy there talking about his, off to the side here, talking about his uncle and how JFK tried to end in the 60s, tried to end the CIA, and then just a very mysterious assassination. Got Nancy Pelosi. This is just for a little chuckle. We'll get back to the serious stuff in just a moment.
And we need immigrants in this country. Forget the fact that the vegetables would rot in the ground if they weren't being picked by many immigrants, many illegal immigrants.
What?
The fact is that the birth rate in this country is way below replacement level.
This hits home for Nancy, okay?
Sure.
Where's the labor
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
Why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick the crops down here.
Who's gonna pick the grapes? And you wouldn't want the Chardonnay.
So that's bad. I'd almost say that's racist. A lot of immigrants have skills other than just working crops, and the issue is illegal immigrants. I certainly think immigration is fantastic. It is needed. We've got a really bad birth rate, but there's Hungary is actually dealing with the low birth rate issue. It's mostly what you could call a Christian country. And what they're doing to deal with low birth rate is if you have 4 children or more, you don't pay income tax. So guess what? The traditional old families of that country are having a lot of kids. It's fixing the birth rate issue. But either way, immigration always can be fantastic if you're actually
We need immigrants
watching
in
and
this
be, looking over who is coming into the country. Remember, we're all pretty much, if you're living in North America, we're almost all immigrants. So when people are racist against immigrants, I find that mind-boggling. Doesn't make any sense to me. But I also think it's awful to, to call people racist or hateful if they're questioning, which immigrants should come in. We want people who have skills or education, a usable education or useful skills. We need plumbers. We need electricians. These people build societies, and we've got a real issue with most of the crafts people are going towards and into retirement. And, for every 1 to 18 craftspeople, depending on the craft, that's leaving the market, you've got like one person coming in. We've got a serious issue when it comes to getting enough skilled labor to keep society going. Was going to show this, but I'll summarize it. You've got Chrystia Freeland getting asked by a media person, how do you feel about a journalist who got arrested because there was a journalist in Canada, January 8th, just had a microphone near Chrystia Freeland, one of the bodyguards or agents protecting her, they deliberately went right into the journalist and then charges him with assault. Ridiculous. The current system is hating free speech. That's why I worry somewhat. Individuals that use their free speech, it doesn't always turn out very well for them. And I know this is a small channel, I'm probably very safe, but are we safe from Disease X? Let's talk a little bit about Disease X in just a moment.
To stop getting the COVID vaccine.
Fox 35's Hannah McKenzie is joining us live from the Alert Center tonight. So, Hannah, he says what's in the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines is a problem.
Yeah, Luann, John, Florida Surgeon General Dr. Latipo says he has safety concerns pertaining to the discovery of billions of DNA fragments found per dose in the Pfizer and Moderna COVID vaccines. And he says those concerns have not been addressed by the FDA or the CDC. Dr. Latipo says if the risks of DNA integration with COVID vaccines cannot be addressed, then the vaccines aren't appropriate for use in humans. He says he sent letters to the heads of the FDA and the CDC specifically questioning how this would impact humans in 3 main areas: healthy human genes being transformed into cancerous cells, chromosomal instability, and how the integration could affect unintended parts of the body, such as the heart, brain, lungs, even the injection site site itself. We asked local Dr. Michael Sparks to weigh in. Dr. Sparks telling us with the state Surgeon General saying one thing and the FDA another, health providers are left stuck in the middle.
Yeah, so who's wrong here? Is the FDA? Have they been bought out by Big Pharma? Or is the head doctor for the state of Florida way off basis? Now, I think it's important that we can have conversations about it, because having any conversation on YouTube about or Facebook about COVID pretty recently put you in the censored group, meaning no money coming in if you have, if you live off of a business, off of YouTube or Facebook, and less communication with others. And whatever your opinion may be on the booster shots and whatnot, I think it's important that we can have a conversation as adults, a dialogue, not attack each other, but a debate, a dialogue. And really, I like the term dialogue because it means one party shares some data information, the other party shares some data information. I share that I got COVID 5 times, but I have 3 COVID shots, and I believed it when I was told that if I got the COVID shot, 1, I'd get some of my freedoms back, which was wrong, and that 2, I would not be able to transmit it to anyone, and I wouldn't be able to get it. And then, of course, later on, dirty politicians being dirty politicians who allowed, Pfizer to make $100 billion off of this and brainwash everyone on TV through propaganda. Then they go back and say, oh, well, they never, we never said that it would prevent getting it and giving it, which is a big crock.
To normal?
We can kind of almost see the end. We're vaccinating so very fast. Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
Getting vaccinated and getting a booster shot when eligible can save your life and protect you and your family and friends from getting seriously ill and spreading infection.
What do you think the probability is? 80%?
Personally, I think it's 100%. I think that there's a reduction in transmission.
COVID if you have these vaccinations. We have all the vaccines we need. We just need our people to take it. A, for their own protection, for the protection of their family, but also to break the chain of transmission. You want to be a dead end to the virus. So when the virus gets to you, you stop it. You don't allow it to use you as the stepping stone to the next person.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them, the virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this.
Back to normal?
We can kind of almost see.
Yeah, so no matter what your opinion is, free speech is important. So thank you for letting me express mine. Now, you might be saying, come on, Johnny, that's not important. We're out of COVID. It's done. Well, it's more important than ever. Highlander, military leadership teaches to question decisions and try to make the right choice based on, the field data, the data you have, the data you're observing, what you came into the field with, what you're taking in, make the best decision possible, question everything. Highlander is right. Kindness is always free. Don't attack the individual. And don't even necessarily attack their viewpoint. Try to create a dialogue where you both walk away more knowledgeable from sharing information. Kindness is free, and we can all be so much stronger and so much freer if we share information, that we're not against each other. Remember, these groupings based on gender and sex and race, it's not what's important. We're all so similar because we're all just trying to take care of our families, provide for our families, keep some freedom, and be safe. So we need to remember that and not allow media to pin each other against one another. even if that means sometimes that, you know, the system puts away people for, you know, like we saw earlier in the show, some people that, you know, did the right thing protecting other individuals on a train, puts them away for, you know, gives them a huge bail, and then puts people who are, you know, attacked a person in their own home, broke into a home, attacked the person in their home at knife point, that they don't have any bail. That's part of the whole system to just get us to hate one another. And we shouldn't hate one another. We should love one another, but find solutions together through dialogue, because we're going to need some dialogue that brings more knowledge to the table, that we all walk away more knowledgeable, because disease X is coming. The WHO is already preparing for disease X. They will take away they will override our constitutional rights, our, you know, whether it's the Canadian Constitution, the American Constitution, Western civilization will be destroyed. It'll be destroyed by diluting the countries and diluting their laws. This is wild. The UN worries me. The WHO worries me. Disease X worries me the most. We saw that. Now, it's quite likely that the COVID virus came from the Wuhan labs, that Dr. Fauci funded the Wuhan labs, even though he said that he did not, under oath to the judicial system, many times under oath said that he didn't, attacked the Senator Paul for, you know, even attacked him, saying he didn't know anything, didn't know what he was talking about, under oath said that, you know, no money ever went to Wuhan. And then, you know, the real story is that Obama shut down Fauci's work in the States with what is essentially could be considered a bioweapon, COVID. And you might be saying, Johnny, that's all done. Who cares? You're old news. I'm not old news, folks. They're working on disease X, and it's wild. They're somehow legally allowed to rework the COVID virus in a lab to make it so much deadlier. Remember, our vaccines were only tested on a few mice before given to us, and there's some questionable adverse effects. Remember, Johnson & Johnson their vaccine has been taken off the market very slowly. The AstraZeneca vaccine has slowly come out to maybe be not so great for us. As time moves forward, let's see what other issues come out. But we know that mRNA technology in itself, its creator, inventor, said it's not being used properly. It's being used in a potentially dangerous manner within humans. And he was censored. He was cut off. He wasn't allowed to join and add to the dialogue. He was censored. He's the guy that invented it. This is wild. Disease X is so much more deadlier because they've tested it on humanized mice. That means mice with essentially human cells, human-like cells, and it's killed 100% of them. And the WHO is talking about disease X. Various elites are saying that the next pandemic will be so much worse, and I believe them because I think there's some planning done to this. This is wild here. Just follow me along with this. Something to consider. So you've got a Chinese lab crafting mutant COVID-19 strain with 100% out of underground results, decomposition result for the mice in humanized mice. So a surprisingly rapid death. And it is actually concerning because I believe, if I recall reading on this, it was an 8-day death period. And on, I believe it was the 5th or 6th day, the mice had their eyes turn white. Makes me think of a zombie movie. And with 100% of the mice not making it through the trial testing, it worries me that disease X, when the elites say that the next pandemic will be so much worse, so much deadlier, yeah, I can believe it. When they say that the previous COVID will be like fire alarms, fire drills, and it'll have been practice for something more serious, yeah, I can believe it if you allow stuff like this to be legal. You remember originally the group that was in charge of finding out where the COVID-19 outbreak came from concluded that, before publicly concluded, they internally concluded it was likely from a lab. in Wuhan. And then they were paid or pressured into saying that it was from a wet market, from an animal live market in China. And then so many of us, all those, those Chinese markets, on our mighty high horse, when in reality, factory farms in the United States and Canada aren't any better. Folks, if you can, support family farms, because that is in many family farms either come close to fitting into a nice, safe ecological circle, and some go out of their way and do fit into a perfect ecological circle where they're not constantly tilling up the grass, killing all sorts of little animals, that the cow patties that do produce methane gas, that they feed the grass, and that there's little animals underneath the dirt and within the grass, mice and rabbits and foxes and lots of birds, lots of flowers, and that then these farms also have forests to have wood to burn for heating and as a fuel source, and that these forests, guess what? Well, the forests use up the methane. Problem with factory farms is you'll have, 10,000 or even 100,000 animals within a set area, and they just over pollute the land. There's no balance. They essentially burn the land because the dirt just gets too much of certain what could have been nutrients, but instead, because it overpowers and is in far too high numbers, instead of it being nutrients, what the cow expels, the crap from the cow, it just completely burns out the land. So there's a lot of lies out there. We need to question everything, care for one another, because at the end of the day, no matter what religion or color or gender you are, you're going for almost everyone, maybe other than the 1% of society which are known to be, psychopaths, but all the non-psychopaths out there, we're all looking for the same thing: a little love, a little safety, and to do well, a little freedom, and to take care of ourselves and our families. I think it's awful that big media is pushing out discouraging families. It's this, big sex culture. Sex shouldn't sell, folks. What should sell is family values. Look at Hungary. They want to keep their traditional Christian Western values. So what are they doing? They're removing income tax they have removed income tax for families that have 4 or more children. And the result is the population is going up. And if you don't go down that road and you want to have immigration, great. Immigration can be fantastic. Just don't have open borders and let anyone in. You can't, it's not racist to say it's not a good idea to have people that have not had a background check come into your country, because some of them, it's not racist to say that statistically, if you have 1 million people come into a country in 1 year, some of them will be known criminals. Some of them will pose a danger to the people already living here. It's wild. And it's also wild to think that these people, blanket, let's make any one of them, let's let any one of them into the military or into the police force, and let's let them vote, because then you can just buy votes. Whoever is the party that lets people in without any criteria is going to be the party that gets all their votes. So let's just think things through, folks. Be there for each other. Highlander, thank you for the support. Disease X is wild. Disease X, I think, is this virus, COVID, that's been legally allowed in a bioweapons lab. This is a bioweapons company, and it's a bioweapons lab that we're supposed to all just think it's totally okay that they've mutated the COVID-19 strain so that it has a 100% non-survivability rate within 8 days of the mouse population, and that these are humanized mice, that this is somehow okay. Come on, we need some laws. We need to be focusing on doing what's right and ethical. I don't see how any lab needs to be working on making COVID much more deadly. And this deadly, and heck, when we're talking about mice with white eyes on day 6 and that they're no longer in existence come day 8 with 100%, I'd say that's failure rate, but clearly they're trying to make something unbelievably deadly. So I guess it's a success rate for them. Let's just hope that that well, there's not a little pinhole in one of these little protector helmets. Some kids get born because someone put a pinhole in the condom. Well, let's hope that there aren't any pranksters in this lab putting pinholes in the suits, because then we might have a very deadly outbreak, in which case it's going to be wild, because all the, what the CIA would call goats, those are not greatest of all time for the CIA, but they call individuals that buck the system, whether the system's good and it's like a farmer who's kindly feeding them, or they're being hard-headed and unwilling for very good reasons. But the CIA calls the portion of the society that has free thought and are critical thinkers and question the crap that gets put on in the media. They're called goats because there's always like 10% of the goat herd, which is just very difficult to deal with. And no matter what, whether it's a bad guy on the farm there, whether it's the butcher that's there or the farmer that feeds them, they're going to headbutt everybody. Well, the CIA calls those goats. Well, I worry that with the previous COVID, some people are questioning if the vaccine is worse, if the medication is maybe even worse than actually getting COVID. I've had COVID 5 times. I'm fine. My 80-year-old father just fought off COVID, and he almost died in the hospital from something else, but he was able to fight off COVID, and when he was very weak, very ill, and had just lost 50 pounds and still was able to fight off COVID. Some of us, I worry if there is a truly deadly pandemic, is going to be like, oh, no, we've been through this, and it's going to be the goats. It's going to be the people that question the system, that looked at the last pandemic and said, I'm not losing my freedoms again. Forget this. I'm going out. I'm doing my things. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to go play tennis with the family. And that these people are going to be the people that are getting sick. All the people that are the ones that question society because they want to keep their freedoms, critical thinkers, that we're going to be the victims of the next whatever. They're calling it Disease X, and the WHO is planning for it. So folks, stay as free as possible. Be as kind as possible to one another. Remember, we all learn more in open dialogue. By questioning other people, it's great to question other people. Question them with facts and data. Facts and data, our viewpoints need to change with time as new facts and data come out. Originally, I was, for, I'm throwing on a mask, even though I was already questioning, wait, hold on, the mask, if I cough into it, I feel some of that air come to the other end. And from day one, I was like, you know what, they're saying 6 feet distance and a mask. I was like, no way, when you put on the mask, shouldn't it then be, shouldn't it cut down that distance? And it should not be 0 distance, because some air, I'm still able to breathe through this mask. I can put it right up against my lips and push air through. So I was like, it just makes your germ cover, instead of maskless being 6 feet out there, it's still 1 to 3 feet in front of me. But anyways, that was the past. Let's focus on the future. Let's be strong and kind together, folks. Thank you so much for watching. You're a fantastic community to last 2 hours with us. Love the fact that we've got a community throwing back the chat back and forth. I wish you all a good night. Stay as free as possible. Stay as healthy as possible. Question everything. And see you in the next live. Thank you so much, everybody, for the support. Really appreciate it. Don't forget, family farms. Try to buy from family farms as much as possible. Support your local businesses. And do remember that during the pandemic, big corporations were allowed to stay open and continue to sell us crap, but family businesses went out of business because they were forced close. Oh, how awful that was. And I'm seeing Taylor Swift in the comments. Remember, Taylor Swift, in 4 months, 3 to 4 months of using her jet, over the course of 1 year, will emit the CO2 that a family will basically use in about roughly 40 years. Doing some quick math, an adult, male or female, will use a little less, will create less carbon than what Taylor Swift does flying around on her jet in the period of 1 year. And somehow private jets, they have not been doing anything to cut down on people's private jet use, but somehow they're cutting down on our vehicle use. Wait until you see what's coming down the road. I'll be there to cover it. But I think slowly, I'm already seeing that private ownership of vehicles is becoming more and more difficult because they're becoming more expensive because of those added taxes for not being electric, but then electric vehicles are too expensive for most. Thank you for writing Finisher if you made it this far, folks. Thank you so much. The WB, Ridgeview, Highlander, 4 High, 4 Low, my Stay Steady troop. Thank you so much. Don't forget, let's all catch Tim Bart's at Long MacArthur Ford on Tuesday nights. You got All Terrain Nation. You got Outsider Reviews, great show over there. Driven Wild Outdoors with Dwayne and Gavin. Great people there. Driven Wild Outdoors is they're amazing people and very smart and pretty aware of what's going on. Good people. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.